Christ.
May the words of my mouth and meditation of our hearts be always acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and Redeemer.
Amen.
Amen.
Be seated. As I listened to these this morning and read over them quickly before the service, I was wondering what I was going to talk about, what was going to stick to me for a homily. And I was kind of at a loss. There were a couple things that kind of really jumped out. I was, nothing was really on point. This isn't some big feast day, or we're in that weird season between Ascension and Pentecost where Easter's kind of over, but things are still there. And it struck me then, this piece with Paul and his leaving. I'm not going to see you again, and these final instructions, and it's before he's put on the ship to be sent to Rome and then ultimately executed. So he's taking his leave, but it's not like he's on his deathbed yet. He has time to write all kinds of letters while he's in prison in Rome. So it's quite a while, but it's reached a point where he's going, he's not coming back. And it's not like people can come visit him in Rome or anything like that. So there's a final goodbye that's happening. And so it's not quite, like death or a funeral or a passing like that, because they're still out there, they're still doing things, and so there's a mourning for a loss, but it's not quite finality. And at the same time, from Paul's side, he's leaving the church, and it's almost like kids going off to college or moving out. It's like, okay, now it's your turn. And so if Paul, because he refers to himself as the spiritual father so often of the churches that he's founded, you hope you've done enough that they can continue to do what they're supposed to do and not fold and not fall and things like that. And it really struck me, though, that in the past, say, 6 months, a lot of our longtime clergy have retired. And it's very, very similar to that, because they're not dying, but they're leaving. And they're leaving behind a church that hopefully they've served and done their part so that the church may continue. And whatever God has given for the people and the location and the community there, it can continue. But at the same time, there's this finality to that. At least within our tradition, when you retire, you go away. You don't see them anymore. So you don't come sliding back when there's, my really important parishioner or big donor or my favorite people, they're having a wedding or a funeral and this was actually a discussion the last couple of weeks between some other clergy and myself, talking about that, because it's hard. People don't necessarily understand that. When you retire from a bank, you might still see the people. You stop by, you say hi, you get lunch. When you retire working in an office, you come by, you stop by, those things. But we do have these rules that when you are clergy, particularly rectors and settled things, we've been there for a while, when you leave, you leave. Because there's a tendency for people to want to hold on. If the people could have held on to Paul when he left, they would have. So you need to have this time to move on, because somebody else is going to come, and they need to be able to, grow into their role, and the community needs to be able to grow with them. And so you get this expectation, like, okay, well, you're retiring and you have to leave, but by July you can come back and do my daughter's wedding, right? Or baptize my grandson. Oh, not July. Okay, well, how about October? Could you come back? No, this is it. And people get angry about it because, well, no, but I want them to do it. Be like, well, then you should have had it done earlier. There's just all sorts of stuff like that, and it's something that is hard to wrap your head around unless you've been in it. And even then, sometimes it's like, well, That's why people are discouraged from following clergy. So, with the retirement, they don't really go anywhere else, so you don't have that. But if they were to switch to a different parish in your diocese nearby, and I know people have done this, they say, okay, well, that's where I'm going to go now. Which, while they're there, is fine, but when they finally leave, suddenly it's like, well, I was here for them, not here for the community. And it makes you wonder why, or question or think about why you're actually in a place. And so you get that sort of cult of personality thing going on and things like that. But I've found in trying to explain this to people who are aggrieved at the rules, I found the most traction in explaining it, saying, think about it. If you get married and you keep talking to your old girlfriend, how's that going to work? Yeah, you might have, you broke up and you were friends, but it's still not good. There's just, it's too many problems. And so it's interesting thinking about that and seeing how it was playing out here too. Now Paul was not, he wasn't leaving of his own accord. He was under arrest and Rome was making him do this, but he remained under house arrest for a while, so he probably could have worked some things out. But there's an acceptance to that and saying goodbye. And the other piece that was rattling around in my brain when thinking about this is when people leave a parish. Again, I'm not talking when people die, because that's a finality thing, but say when they move from Pennsylvania to Florida, or they move, to the other side of the state because that's where their grandkids are, or things like that. Or if they leave because they're like, I don't like it here anymore, something has changed. Most of the time, people just one day go, and you don't get the weeping and the goodbyes and the walking you to the ship moment that Paul got. And so, I guess if I were to recommend something out of this that isn't based off the canons of the church or the rules around retirement, the official things, but if you're ever in a situation where you do leave a church, and maybe this applies to larger communities as well, don't just slide out the door. Take the time to say goodbye. Take the time and allow the community to say goodbye to you. We actually have services for the sending of people when they're leaving. And so if you're going to move to Florida or wherever, let the church take that day to say goodbye in a very formal way within the service, and not just wave as you go, or here's a cookie, but actually take that time to have the time together before you leave, to make sure that you all walk to the boat together. So you have that, and no one's left saying, man, I wish I had said, or wish I had done. So we might not be comfortable with it and say, well, people are going to make a big deal of me, like, let them. I get that with my kids all the time. They don't want to be celebrated by their grandparents and things like that. It's like, let us celebrate that. I know it's embarrassing for you to stand up there, but do it. Yeah, do it. So, to God be all the glory now and forever.
Amen.